I've seen the videos of Elon talking about he wanted education to be problem focused rather than tool focused, right? So I was like, what is that? Is that what led to you creating Synthesis for the school? And I was kind of walk me through that. And I never asked him that story like from to tell me that the whole way through before. And so he was like, yeah, I was at this other school, teaching Elon's kids, and he would come in for like parent teacher conferences. And it's like he's Elon Musk. I didn't think he would want to talk about like normal stuff parents wanted to talk about at conferences. And so I showed him this Goldilocks exercise I had the kids do, which was basically you give the kids $1 trillion in hypothetical money, and you give them a couple sectors in the economy or in the world to allocate it, and you just ask like, how do you want to allocate the money? Do you want to conserve like endangered species habitats? Do you want to invest in healthcare, education? Like, how do you want to invest this money? And like Elon thought it was pretty cool. And so then when Elon wanted to start the school, he's like, came to me and was like, remembered this teacher is kind of like aligned with what I want to do. And so then now he's like reporting to Elon. He's the only teacher in the world reporting to Elon Musk, and it's pretty intense, right? Because you want to keep your job, and you're just every meeting you're just like constantly worried that you're going to get fired. And so he knows kind of Elon's dictate is like teach kids how to solve problems, which he's like, well, Elon's the world's best problem solver. Let me like observe him when I'm in the meetings with him, and he's watching. I mean, the interesting thing is like he said Elon has an incredible command of the details on a lot of things that have to do with the rockets, material science, like that kind of stuff he knows just incredibly well. When he's meeting with Josh, who's running the school, he doesn't have the full context. Like Josh knows the details more than he does. And so Josh is realizing he's coming to these meetings. Josh is kind of telling him what's going on with the school, and he lacks the context, but he's gotten really good at auditing your reasoning, communicating what he wants, and communicating with you to like figure out the course corrections. So you strip away all the context, and he's still got some skill of thinking and problem solving even without the command of the details. And so Josh is observing this, and he's thinking, that's really interesting. How can I get kids to do this? Because the normal way in school is you'll do like a whole unit where you learn, about everything. You do all this like knowledge gathering, and then you'll do a project like at the end. And he's like, that's pretty like time consuming. And you can see like Elon's doing this thing where he doesn't need all that information. He can just like kind of reason from first principles. And so Josh starts giving the kids these problems where he strips away a lot of the context. So it's like he started asking them a question SpaceX dealing with at the time: how would you move the company to Brownsville, Texas? And the kids they get really into that, right? They come up with all these plans, and they get really excited by it, and they're really, really like learning to think and to communicate with each other to form these plans. But when you get to the end of it, it's like, cool, good plan. And then that's it, right? You just like throw it away. There's no action, there's no feedback. And so from that, he started making these, turning these kind of questions into simulations where you're competing with the other teams. And now there's a reality. Now you can do the iterative feedback loops. Now there's emotional stakes, right? So before, when it's just a question, it's like cognitively interesting. But in the real world, you need to actually make decisions. You need to see how things turn out. You need to course correct, and that's how we arrived at the full suite that is Synthesis.
This is fascinating because when I was at Facebook, at one point, the interview process would essentially allow for product managers to interview potential product managers that were coming into the business. And the way that we did it was they would go through some screening and filtering, but then there was 3 people that were current product managers that would each take a specific track. So you're going to focus on like product development. I'm going to focus on like execution and teamwork, and somebody else may focus on like cultural fit or something, right? And you go into the interview, and it's just one-on-one with the individual. But I'm here to specifically get at this angle for the interview process. And the one that I spent the most time learning about, and eventually ended up doing over 100 interviews at the company with candidates around, was giving them a hypothetical situation and then basically continuously feeding them more and more information to see how they thought through the problem. So I have no clue that any of this is going on. It's the first time that I'm hearing some of these details. And I learned this from some of the product managers at Facebook who are very good at interviewing people. And the example I would always use is like, hey, you come into work on Friday, everything's fine, you have a great day at work, you go home Friday night, you come back Monday morning, and 50% of the traffic to your product has disappeared. What do you do? And it's fascinating because what it got at was, I always remember the best answer I ever had was somebody who had been doing this for 15 years. First thing they said was, I would immediately alert everyone on the team that we have a problem. Everyone would just jump to solve the problem. But somebody who had done it before is like, communicate,
get
right?
more brains on the problem.
Exactly. So like little things like that you pick up on, like, okay, this person knows what they're doing versus somebody who just tries to jump at it.
Yeah.
And as you would work through the problem, you would basically tell them more. Okay, they would say, hey, I would go and I would check the dashboards. Fine. When you check the dashboard, you see that no traffic has dropped off from these 3 platforms. And you just kind of keep giving them more and more information. And eventually, like, it would end up with, like, we would get on the phone with Google and ask them why our links are broken or, whatever.
Yeah.
And you really, really got a good sense for how somebody thought, what they would do in that situation, even though it was just 2 people sitting in a room talking about a hypothetical.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's really similar, actually, to what Elon and Josh figured out with the school, and synthesis as a class specifically was just doing that, but doing it for kids rather than waiting until you're 20s, 30s, 40 years old to try to put you in that situation.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's really strange. Like, I know people who have been to law school, people who worked at McKinsey, which is like a consulting firm where they're really like, kind of teach you this rigorous thought process. Obviously, and then computer programmers. I feel like computer programming is where I learned to think and reason properly, because you just come face to face with the results of your sloppy thinking, right? And that's what synthesis does for kids. Like it's if you do this thing in school, like the kind of like the previous, the iteration, the step like right before we got to synthesis is like, plan something out, like make a plan, do what you're doing in like the Facebook interviews, but it's just kind of like sterile to do that, right? Because you need that feedback from the environment. So when you're learning to like program, you get that feedback, and it's like, it's brutal, like shows you how sloppy your thinking is. If you're in law school, you've got to argue with other people, and so you'll get eviscerated if you don't do it properly. In school, like, I'm not sure where kids ever get that experience. And the test that you come up against in school is just like, did you spit the information back, or did you kind of repeat the teacher's opinions back to them? And what's nice about the way we do it in synthesis, it's like it's combat for your mind, and it's a team sport. It's team combat, which is the way that the world actually works. And it just takes the teacher out of it. It's not like if we're saying this is bad work, it's like, it's not our opinion. Like you just got destroyed in this game. And that's just really cool to see that. Like the kids that come in who are the smart kids, like the gifted kids, they get smashed that first time, and they always come in, they're super confident, like, we're going to crush everybody because I always get the best grades on the tests in school. And so they got this plan, they go into battle and they get crushed, and they'll start crying a lot of times, but then they'll come back and because it's that ego, just humbling yourself. And I think it's really good to get that experience early, because then you just kind of, you shut off the part of you that's like, I need approval. I'm just going to get like the grades and the gold stars and everything. And you start worrying about like how to actually improve yourself and improve your thinking.
Is intellectual humility like a key foundational component of being able to think clearly? Like, do the kid have to get to that point? And it's almost like, it's kind of like military boot camp, like you got to break them down before you build them back up to some degree? Yeah,
I think that's right. I think it's always like one of the things that most admired about Elon is the way he talked about his projects like early on. It's like, I don't really think these things are necessarily going to work, but they're worth trying. And I think it's just really important to keep that mindset. And if you read a lot of history, and people who get killed are often like the most arrogant about their prospects. The generals that survive and keep winning are the ones who are always worried about losing. And so, you want to get that. I know I like graduated from school and like went out and like started businesses and just got killed. Like I just did not realize what an idiot I was, and I had to learn the hard way, and like cost a lot of money and just made a lot of long-term, a lot of mistakes. And I think, the hope with synthesis is that you can, I really think the problem is in school, you just don't get to act, right? Like you're not an agent. You're like a passive kind of receptacle of information. And there's some value of that. Like we all need to learn arithmetic, and we all learn how to read, and there's some basic information we need to know. But I think we kind of stretch out school and make what could be learned in 1 or 2 hours a week. We just stretch it out for 8 hours a day just because we have to fill the time. And what synthesis does is it gives kids a chance to be an agent. It's like, mental combat. It's fun. It's like a team sport for sharpening your thinking and sharpening your communications.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching that clip of the Best Business Show. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you know when we go live every weekday, and then head to SoFi.com/pomp so that you can get an account and we can get after it.